Hey, just to note that this episode includes details about abuse, residential schools, and intergenerational trauma. Please take care while listening. Leticia Racine has this memory of a spring day in 1978. She isn't even 2 years old. She's just a toddler.
I remember that day really potently, and I remember the picture that was taken. It was Sandra that was holding me, and I had this little red jacket, and I remember her crying, and I didn't understand why.
Sandra, her foster mom, is cradling her on one hip. They're outside the log cabin where they live. Leticia is about to say goodbye to that home. And Sandra is about to say goodbye to Leticia.
It was so heartbreaking for her, and I can cry now thinking about it, getting emotional, because I remember those feelings that she had.
Feelings of loss. Because today, Leticia is going back to her First Nation on the Long Plain Reserve.
It was such a pivotal moment. That was the day that I was taken back to Linda.
Linda is Leticia's birth mom, and it's been more than a year since they've seen each other. What neither Linda or Sandra know is that this day is the beginning of a long legal fight, an adoption battle that results in one of the most significant and controversial rulings in Canadian family law. I'm Falen Johnson, and this is See You in Court, a podcast about the cases that changed Canada. This is Racine and Woods Part 1. It's a story about two mothers who loved a little girl so much they fought to the country's highest court over the right to raise her. But it's also about what happened to Leticia after the court made its decision, and why Indigenous kids are still feeling the impact of that ruling more than 40 years later. Dawna Dingwall brings us the story. So, Dawna, you have a pretty unique connection to this story. In a way, you've been following it for years.
Yeah, and if you look at that photo that Leticia talked about, her foster mom, Sandra, is wearing a T-shirt. And on the front of it, it says Deloraine Collegiate. And that was her high school. And eventually, I went to school there too, because I grew up in the same community as Sandra. And Leticia's foster dad, Alan Racine, he's from a Métis community just outside of town in the Turtle Mountains in southwest Manitoba.
So, did you know Leticia growing up?
Well, I'm a few years older than her, but I remember her. In fact, I can picture her sitting cross-legged in a circle of kids in the United Church basement at Sunday school. Deloraine at that time was about 1,200 people, so you sort of know everyone and you know each other's business, if I can put it that way. The adults around me would certainly have talked about her case, but it really wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I was working as a reporter in Winnipeg that I thought about Leticia again. I came into work and I flipped open the paper and I saw this story about an armed robbery. And these two kids were on the run and considered dangerous, so their photos had been given to the media. The girl had frizzy permed hair, big glasses. I wouldn't have recognized her. But the name under the photo was Leticia Christine Racine.
Wow. So from Sunday school to the front page of newspapers, that must have been a pretty wild moment for you.
It was shocking, and I had so many questions about what had happened to Leticia in that past decade that led her to being involved in something like that. And when it became easier to search online, I'd look her and the case up periodically, and I didn't initially understand how significant the ruling was. And a year or two ago, I found an email for Leticia, and I reached out to her.
And how did she respond?
Now, given it was completely out of the blue, she was actually really open to having a conversation. And it turned out she was in a place in her life where she wanted to understand more about the adoption case and its impact on her and on other kids. So we started talking about how we might do that together.
I'd like to get the details, clear details from both Sandra and Linda about what happened. And I'd really like to know how Racine versus Woods is impacting decisions that are made today. Is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? And what can I do to make it better?
So that's how Leticia and I ended up in a rental car on our way to Long Plain First Nation, which is about an hour and a half west of Winnipeg.
So haven't ever been out here before?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I've done stories on different reserves, but I don't think I ever came out here. Not that I can remember. So we're going to talk to Linda Daniels, Leticia's birth mom, to see if she can help shed some light on those questions that Leticia has. So walking into Linda's house, the first thing you see is a hand-drawn poster that says, "Please respect my drug and alcohol-free home." And there's also lots of little inspirational sayings on the walls like smudge, pray, stay humble.
Right. It's like the super Indigenous version of Live, Laugh, Love. I'm First Nations. I'm Mohawk and Tuscarora from Six Nations. And I've been in a lot of homes that sound just like this one.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, Falen, I was a bit nervous about this interview. I'm white, and I likely don't need to tell you there is this long history of white journalists coming into places like Long Plain, parachuting in to cover stories, usually traumatic ones, and not always respecting or understanding the communities. So Leticia and I had been talking about doing something different. That's why we were there together, and in the end, Linda is so welcoming.
Do you want a sandwich? These are good. Thank you for these, Mom.
I had a sandwich like that in the airport. In a plane up the plane. Yeah. It cost me $13.
Before we start the interview, Leticia offers to do a smudge.
Do you want a smudge?
Sure.
I just explained to her about smudging. So the medicines there just to, cleanse your energy and your aura.
It smells amazing.
And put you in a good space.
This feels like an important ceremony given what we're here to talk about, a time in Linda's life that was a mixture of joy and hardship. Linda was 22. It was 1976. And she was giving birth to her third baby, Leticia.
We were alone in that big hospital. I was by myself. And when they brought her to me, oh my God, this is a beautiful baby, real Anishinaabe girl. And I said, what am I going to call her? Then I don't know where I got the name from Leticia. And nobody's got that name. That's a rare name. That's how I'm going to call Leticia. I'm not going to lose her. She'll be, she'll always have that precious name. She was so beautiful. Oh, she's still beautiful.
But after Linda and Leticia leave the hospital, it's pretty tough going.
We moved into a house, and it wasn't a very good house. It was cold. I thought, this is not fair to my kids, to the baby. I was scared for her to be sick. So when I asked the Child and Family Service, can you help me until I find a better house?
But the house isn't the only thing Linda needs help with. Her husband, Lloyd Woods, just got out of jail for assaulting her. And he's not happy about the fact that she got pregnant with Leticia while he was locked up.
He was very violent towards me because, of having a child someplace else. He was, kind of jealous, I guess.
Leticia's heard this story for years, that Lloyd was the reason she had to be put in a foster home.
That was the story that I was told because he found out that I wasn't his, right? And he had threatened my life. And so they had to put me in care to keep me safe.
Linda tells me both she and her ex-husband went to residential school. In fact, Linda, her parents, most of her 14 brothers and sisters were forced to attend the schools. Linda went to Sandy Bay, a Catholic-run school. She says what she endured there impacted her ability to be the kind of parent she wanted to be.
Oh, I didn't have very good parenting. When I first had my Jason and Lydia, I used to spank them because I was spanked or hit in a residential school, and I thought, well, this is not right. So I went to 2 parenting courses before I was comfortable hugging my children, loving them, holding them, singing to them. I had to take those courses because we didn't have those in the residential school. We were hit, ridiculed, shamed, sexually abused.
Linda spent years using alcohol to cope.
I didn't want to drink, but I drank for the pain to go away.
This isn't an uncommon story. Many who survive the residential school system self-medicate. So Linda has a newborn, her housing situation isn't good, her violent husband is out of jail, and she is coping with a lot of trauma. This is a lot to deal with.
Yes. So Leticia goes into foster care when she's 6 weeks old. It's only meant to be temporary. The idea is Linda will come back for Leticia when she's more settled. But when Linda tries to get Leticia back, she's met with resistance at Child and Family Services. She says they convince her to leave Leticia in care for a year with the hope that things will be more stable by then. So that's what she does. It's 3 days before Christmas in 1976 when Leticia arrives in the Turtle Mountains. Her first foster home is actually with relatives of Alan Racine's. When he and his girlfriend Sandra come to visit, she sees baby Leticia for the first time.
I was in a car seat in the living room, and she walked in, and when she seen me, she said she just fell in love with me. She said it was instant.
A few weeks later, Sandra starts fostering Leticia.
She was 18 when she first got me, and her first foster child, and she hadn't had any children up to that point, and she was told by the doctors that she couldn't have children.
Wait, did I hear that right? Sandra was 18 when she became Leticia's foster mom?
Yeah, it's hard to fathom by today's standards. Alan, on the other hand, is 34. He already has 3 kids, but in those early months, it's Leticia who gets so much of Sandra's love and attention.
When she had got me, I had ended up in the hospital at some point, I believe, and I had pneumonia and bronchitis at the same time, and she healed me. And so, we had that strong mother bond right from the get-go.
So that bond between Sandra and Leticia, it's growing. And you can imagine what it's like to be the person who witnesses all those firsts in a baby's early life, crawling, walking, talking, and how attached you get. But Leticia is only supposed to be in foster care with the Racines for a year.
So after that foster year is over, Sandra has to give Leticia back to Linda.
Yes. And you might recall that photo taken on the day Leticia went back to her birth mom, Linda. Sandra was holding Leticia, and Leticia could feel that she was upset. In fact, Sandra had such a hard time saying goodbye. She asks to visit Leticia at Linda's. And when she and Alan drop in later that month, Linda's struggling. She's adjusting to having all 3 kids. Money's tight. So the Racines offer to take Leticia home.
She said to me, "We want to adopt Leticia." And I said, "No." And she says, "I can't have children." And says, "You have 2 other children. You have a handful," and da-da-da-da. And she kept on talking to me like that. I said, "No."
And Falen, I need to be clear here. This is based on Linda's memory, as well as what is in court documents. Sandra initially agreed to do an interview for the podcast, but she changed her mind, and she declined to take part. So again, according to Linda, when the Racines first asked to take Leticia home, she said no. But then they came back a week later.
She was the one that was doing all the talking, getting kind of aggressive at the end there, "We want her back, I want her back." And she would cry and cry and cry. And so I just, okay, just get her off my back.
So Linda agrees to let the Racines take Leticia home.
Yes, but she and Sandra have very different versions of what they agree to when she makes the decision. When the case goes to court, Sandra will testify that she walked out of that visit believing that Leticia was, quote, ours to keep. But Linda, she says it was always temporary and that Sandra and Alan would have Leticia, quote, for just a while.
Did you ever talk about whether it would be permanent or?
No, never. I would never give her up. I would never sign nothing. Because I knew I wanted her to be treaty, to know where her ancestors were or where she came from. I didn't want to give her up.
And so that disagreement, it will be what fuels the case through 3 court battles over the next 6 years. It's October of 1978, and although there's no formal foster agreement, Leticia has been living with Alan and Sandra Racine for about 5 months. And this is when Leticia's birth mom, Linda, drives to Sandra and Alan's home.
So I went looking for her in Racine, and I went to the house.
It's pretty late at night when Linda knocks on the Racine's door, unannounced. She tells Sandra and Alan she wants Leticia back on Long Plain.
And people were not, cooperating with me.
Linda leaves. She comes back again the next day, but Sandra and Alan still won't budge.
So the Racines just refuse to give her back. Can they legally do that?
It's a good question. At this point, they don't have legal custody of Leticia. She's just kind of informally staying with them. But part of the reason they're so adamant about keeping her, at least according to court documents, is that Linda says she wants Leticia to live with her sister. And Sandra is not down for that arrangement. She says that she had, quote, no intention of giving that woman back her little girl for her sister.
So the plan would be for Leticia to go and live with her aunt.
Yes, Linda tells me, though, she doesn't actually remember this conversation, but she says that Leticia, or any child being raised with a close relative like an auntie, would not be out of the ordinary.
I was raised by my grandma. And, it's a norm for us to do that.
I totally understand this. I was also raised by my grandma for a few years, and one, it's pretty awesome. And 2, it's pretty commonplace in many Indigenous communities.
But that's not part of this discussion. The Racines tell Linda they're going to fight for Leticia, and after she leaves, they consult a lawyer about adopting her. They don't follow through, in part because Linda seems to disappear from their lives, and they don't hear from her for the next 3 years. So they just carry on raising Leticia. She starts school, and although Sandra thought she couldn't have children, she and Alan do have 2 more kids together, so Leticia becomes a big sister, and it's a pretty stable, happy time.
They were the only people I knew. I was loved and protected and safe for the most part.
But that peace is not going to last. Even though Linda, Leticia's birth mom, isn't knocking on their door anymore, she hasn't forgotten about her daughter. She struggles during this time, but eventually she starts regrouping.
I was trying to educate myself, to stop drinking. I had a daughter out there and I wanted her back. So I had to try and better myself.
By the summer of 1980, Linda's trying to build a new life. She's working on her sobriety, going to university to be a teacher. It's been more than a year since that night she went to the Racines, when they refused to give Leticia back. Now Linda's ready to try again, and she starts with Child and Family Services.
And every time I go back to the office in Brandon, they said, no, we don't want to talk to her. Nobody's here, the work is not here. And so it was always a block all the time.
And she goes to the RCMP. She says they won't help her either. And at one point, she convinces a social worker to drive her to Deloraine so she can get Leticia, but they run out of gas and they never make it. She tries to get a lawyer through legal aid, but gets turned down.
Felt like giving up a lot of times, but I said, no, I'm not going to give up. They're not going to win now. I had her. I carried her for 9 months, and I loved her. She was such a beautiful baby. I wasn't going to give up.
With some help from her brother, who is the chief of Long Plain Reserve, Linda finally does get a lawyer. By now, Leticia's been living with the Racines for more than 3 full years, even longer if you go back to when they first fostered her. And in January 1982, they get a notice that Linda has filed a writ of habeas corpus.
And my Latin is a little bit rusty, Dawna. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it means produce the body in this case being Leticia. Essentially what Linda's saying is, you have my daughter, she's not legally in your care, give her back. But, as we'll hear in our next episode, the Racines aren't about to give in. And it's not long before this fight over Leticia moves from being a private affair to a very public one that's bigger than just one child and 2 mothers.
In Manitoba, a bitter custody battle is underway over a 5-year-old Indian girl.
We're talking about our little daughter, who is 5.5 years old. We have been her only mother and father.
And Indian groups are taking special interest in the case. They feel it challenges the way children's aid societies place Native children.
Because I know she's my child and I love her. She's mine. She's Indian and I'm proud of her. And I miss her. I love her very much.
And that love for a little girl and the battle over who gets to raise her leads to a landmark court case, one that will have big impacts on adoption and custody disputes in Canada. Part 2 is now in your feed. See You in Court is hosted and produced by me, Falen Johnson. And if you like what you hear, make sure to recommend this show to a friend. Dawna Dingwall wrote and reported this episode. Catherine Rolfson is our senior producer. Sam McNulty is our sound designer. Carla Hilton is the executive producer.